And welcome, everybody. We are very happy to have you for our live little chat that we try to have every Friday afternoon. We're so glad that you're joining us, and we're going to be taking your questions and getting to as many of them as possible. Pam Kay, senior producer for The Huckabee Show, joins me here in our theater in Nashville. She'll be passing on the questions. So how can people get questions to us?
Well, of course, right here in the chat, the perfect place. And let us know where you're from. And then, like you mentioned, this is the opportunity, one and only during the week, where you have direct contact with the governor, and that is asking him anything from news from the week, whatever. Personal question. I see you're still donning that beard.
Yeah, I decided I'm growing my mask in case the government insists that I wear one again, even though I'm vaccinated. This is my new mask. So if they say, you got to have a mask on, I say, got it right here, pal. There it is.
Excellent. Also, Super Chat, donate a little $1 or $2 that does not come to us. Welcome to put you at the top of the list with your questions. So we have that as well. And of course, don't forget to share. That's important.
And we got moderators who will be watching the chat so that they can make sure that we get questions that a lot of people are asking for. We would love for you to subscribe to the channel. That way you'll always be aware of what's happening. And when we're going to do one of these, hit the notification bell. It sounds something like that. That way you'll be notified. And we'd love to have your comments. So you can add a comment and be sure to like the page and to share it with others, especially those who can't stand me. Share it with them. It'll really drive them nuts and ruin their weekend. So why not go ahead and do that? Hey, we're going to start with something very positive. I had the most teary moment watching the Olympics when U.S. wrestler Tamyra Mensah Stock, she's a young African-American woman, she showed what the Olympics are supposed to be about, and her love of country and love of her opportunity, absolutely priceless. Please watch this, and we'll make just a comment afterwards.
Of course I surprise myself. It's by the grace of God I'm able to even move my feet. Like, I just leave it in his hands, and I pray that all the practice, that the hell that my freaking coaches put me through pays off, and every single time it does.
That American flag around your shoulders looks pretty good. How does that feel to represent your country like this?
It feels amazing. I love representing the U.S. I freaking love living there. I love it. And I'm so happy I get to represent USA.
I mean, that just makes me want to cry with joy. I love this. I love that young lady because she recognizes what a blessing it is to live in the United States. By the way, if you read her whole story, there is so much more background. She has been through tragedy after tragedy, setback after setback. For her, this was like a breakthrough joy to see her with such excitement, to see that big smile, to see her joyfully put that American flag around her and pay tribute to a great country. It did my heart some good. I think it did for a lot of Americans who are so tired of watching some of these spoiled, arrogant, whiny little athletes take a knee and pretend that they're so oppressed and they barely can stand America. And then to see her, I think she's my hero.
Hope that goes viral too. May already have. All right, going to start off. We've got a lot of folks watching from all over California representing this afternoon, Minnesota, Colorado, Florida, Sweden. Want you to know that.
Good.
So, hello to Dennis in Sweden. All right, Valerie Walker writes us, Gov, why aren't people trying to get the January 6th people out of jail? It seems that no news is coming out about that.
Well, the news media doesn't want everybody to understand just how really absurd some of this is. These are people who have been arrested for misdemeanors, not felonies. Most of them misdemeanor trespassing charges. And remember, no one that day was killed at the Capitol, except there was one person who actually died at the Capitol. It was Ashley Babbitt, who was one of the protesters. And to this day, her husband has not been able to find out who fired the shot and what kind of results had the investigation brought out. She was an Air Force veteran, and she was there. She was unarmed. By the way, there was not one firearm confiscated from the protesters. This was not an insurrection. So when you hear that word, and you hear it all the time from politicians and from news people, an insurrection, you cannot overthrow a country with a flagpole, even if you're mean with the flagpole. You just can't. Even Joe Biden said you need F-15s and nuclear devices, neither of which were present. So I don't know why press isn't even the least bit concerned about people being held, sometimes in solitary confinement, sometimes in deplorable conditions, without bail for going on 8 months, and they still haven't gone to trial. I think it's one of the greatest scandals in the country. By the way, let me also bring up, this is a big topic. We're going to play a clip. This is Joe Biden talking about the idea of having a moratorium on evictions. Now, let me set the stage if you're not keeping up with this. There has been a move so that if you're a landlord, if you own property and you're renting it to someone, because of the pandemic, you are not able to evict them, even if they haven't paid their rent in months. Now, the landlords are not being allowed to forego their payments to the bank for the property that they own. They still have to pay for maintenance and upkeep and all those things, but they're supposed to just eat the cost of the rent, which people who own homes, a lot of whom, they're not rich people. In fact, over 30% of the people who own rental property are people who are middle to lower economic class. They're just renting property. It's like their income. Anyway, Joe Biden was very clear that on the basis of what the CDC director said, he couldn't just lift the law, but he did it anyway. I want you to watch this clip, and we're going to give you a little insight.
Whether that option will pass constitutional measure with this administration, I can't tell you. I don't know. There are a few scholars who say it will, and others who say it's not likely to. But at a minimum, by the time it gets litigated, it will probably give some additional time while we're getting that $45 billion out to people who are, in fact, behind in the rent and don't have the money.
Okay, now there's a follow-up. We're going to go ahead and play that, and then we'll comment. This is Jen Psaki, White House press secretary, when asked about the fact that Joe Biden essentially said that what he ended up doing was unconstitutional. Watch.
The president may support the legal justification, but he also publicly gave voice to doubts about the constitutionality. What's the White House's message then to Americans who heard what happened yesterday, heard what was said at this podium on Monday, can't square the two, and are now disappointed that the president is signaling that it doesn't respect the rule of law?
I'm not sure there are Americans evaluating it to that degree. Maybe there are some you have talked to. I don't know. What the president has, his message to the American people, especially those who are concerned about losing their homes, being kicked out of their homes, is that he's going to do everything in his power to make sure they can stay in their homes as long as possible.
Okay, now here's the interesting thing she said. Everything in his power. Well, it's not in his power to just put a moratorium on evictions. You can't do that. Presidents don't have that power, and the CDC director most certainly doesn't have that power, and that's a ruling that the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled, and then Justice Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court gave every signal that it would not stand. Joe Biden did it anyway. And he doesn't have that authority. Now, Congress can do it, but Congress hasn't acted upon this. Here's why this really perturbs me, and I hope you will just think through this carefully with me. Then we're going to get right back to your questions. When government ignores the law and just basically says, well, I know what the law is, but I know what the law ought to be or what I wish it were. We're going to do what I want it to be or what I wish it were rather than what it is. Folks, we've lost the country. You cannot have people who are there to uphold the law, who swore on taking oath that they would uphold the Constitution and the laws of the country, who then circumvent the Constitution and the laws of the country because they don't like the way they come out affecting their political lives. This is a very serious issue. It's not small, it's huge. And so I hope you keep your eyes on this stuff. All right.
How's that going to get fixed? That's the question.
Well, the only way it can get fixed, first of all, I'll tell you how it gets fixed. People pay their rent. And if you can't pay your rent, then go to a charity agency. But you cannot have people who own a property and they rent it out. If I rented you an apartment and you didn't pay me for months, I'm still having to pay the note to the bank on the property that you haven't paid me for. And if something goes wrong and a pipe bursts or the elevator goes out, I got to fix it. I got to pay for that. So people talk about fairness. How is it fair to the person who put their money at risk owning a property if the people who in good faith signed a contract to pay rent don't pay the rent? So
Seems simple enough.
it does seem simple enough. Okay.
So, Gov, we got to remind everybody this is a great opportunity to share. Plenty of time to still be part today. To participate in the chat, simply write a question, and Governor's going to answer it right here. So, got another one for you. This one is from Chris Conway. Governor, what is your assessment of Dems trying to investigate Trump? Once again, now come on, they've tried it 5 times. What do Dems hope to find in tax returns?
I bet they're going to find that he has mismatched socks in his sock drawer.
Oh,
He's got a blue and a black sock somewhere, and they're going to criminally charge him for that. I know I'm being facetious, but how much must a person take? $35 million in the Mueller investigation alone, and they didn't find squat. And that was our money, by the way, that they spent looking. Remember when Adam Schiff kept saying, we have the evidence and we're going to present it, and he never did? This is very frustrating. And again, it is a form not of prosecution, but persecution and harassment. And I think we're in for the long haul on this. The left has decided they don't have to play fair. They can lie, they can steal, they can cheat. I'm all for a good political battle. I've been in bunches of them. But when people are biting you at the bottom of the pile, it's kind of hard to call that a fair play. So I don't know where it stops, Chris, but it's out of control. By the way, let's remind everybody, please subscribe, hit the notification bell so we'll be sure to tell you when we're going to be on, and leave a comment, a like, and a share. Okay.
all right. Carla Roberts writes, Governor, why can't we impeach Biden and Harris for the deaths of thousands of people because of all that are coming over the border with COVID?
Well, I mean, you could impeach, but you don't have Republicans controlling the House or the Senate, so it'll never happen in either body. And I'll be the first to tell you, I don't think impeachment ought to be an everlasting political weapon. It ought to be held for the highest of grievances against the Constitution and the people. What Joe Biden has done at the border is nothing short of a disaster. It's mismanagement, it's incompetence, and I believe that it's all done for political theater. I don't understand why he would exploit these people. There are young women who are coming up across that border who were sold off into sex slavery across America. And you would think that the compassionate Democrats would care about what's happening to those young women, but they don't seem to be. You would think that if COVID is a real issue and that it is such a major concern, and I think it is, by the way, but you would think that it is an issue that you wouldn't have people waved across the border who have never been tested for COVID, who don't wear a mask, and who are not vaccinated. And then they're put on buses and planes and sent all over the country to infect the rest of us. Now, if you're a taxpayer and a law-abiding citizen, you're going to be told maybe that you're going to have the vaccine, wear a mask, and not go anywhere. So just identify as an illegal immigrant. You can do whatever you want. That's what I've decided. If somebody comes and says to me, do you have your passport, your vaccine passport? Quite frankly, I do. But you know what I'm going to say? I identify as an illegal immigrant. And not only do I have everything I need, I'd like for you to write me a check and give me a plane ticket. I'd like to take a trip. Why the heck not?
Art Vine, along that same line, says, why is no one suing Biden for breaking the law for the border? And why can't he just simply follow the law?
The issue of suing the president always comes down to standing. So one would have to have what the courts would call standing. I think there are members of Congress who could sue because they could say that he's exceeding his constitutional authority. Frankly, I wish that would happen. And there are ways to hold a president accountable, but it's basically by the other two branches of government, which means Congress needs to file some type, or members of Congress file some type of lawsuit that would go directly to the Supreme Court and to rule that he's overstepping his constitutional authority.
Okay, thank you. JR writes, is taking over this country really this easy? Why are the Republicans not doing anything to stop this tyrannical takeover?
I think that so many people in America are in absolute shock, JR. They can't believe what they're seeing. It's like, is this really happening? Can I believe my lying eyes? And the truth is, yes. there is a concerted effort to destroy America from within. I mean, I didn't want to say that. I didn't want to believe that. But by golly, I look around and I say, it's happening. And what the good side, if there's any to have, is that we're beginning to see people stand up and push back. And I say, go to a school board meeting, go to a city council, go to a state legislative meeting, because when people show up in mass at a school board and they let it be known, their kids are not going to study critical race theory. It's having an impact. And in California, the recall of Gavin Newsom is of extreme importance to the rest of the country. I promise you, every city hall, every state capitol is watching what happens in California. And if Gavin Newsom, the hypocrite who went to a big, expensive restaurant without a mask and would hang out with the swells for his birthday party, if he doesn't get shown the door, then they're going to say, I guess we're okay. But if he gets recalled, people are going to start waking up and saying, I guess Americans have had about it up to here. So that's what we hope happens.
Okay, so another question for you too. What about the idea, and this comes from political foolishness, of forming a new party? The GOP is too corrupted, in his humble opinion.
Well, I'm not going to say it's not corrupted, but here's the problem with forming a political party, because I hear it all the time. Let's have an independent party. Unless you have several billion, not million, billion dollars, you cannot put the infrastructure together that a party has. It would be much easier and way less expensive to change the party within, which, by the way, is what Donald Trump was doing. And it's one of the reasons that so many of the traditional Republicans, the Liz Cheneys of the world and the Adam Kinzingers of the world, they hated him for it, because he was changing the rules and he was turning the power back to the rank and file people and not to the bosses, the people in D.C., the elites at the cocktail parties in Georgetown. But the truth is, to start a political party from scratch means that you've got to create an infrastructure that goes down to every voting precinct in America. I cannot tell you the heavy lift that is, or the extraordinary expense. So I'm still of the opinion that the best way is to do it from within and make sure that strong, conservative, liberty-loving, pro-life people take charge of the party from the lowest level of the precinct all the way to the national level, and be strong for America.
So we take a moment and talk about Governor DeSantis and his actions this morning or this week taking on the president.
It's interesting because Governor DeSantis of Florida has been really hit hard by President Biden. And we're going to show you a little clip because President Biden went after DeSantis and basically said that he was an incompetent governor. Watch this.
Joe Biden suggests that if you don't do lockdown policies, then you should, quote, get out of the way. But let me tell you this. If you're coming after the rights of parents in Florida, I'm standing in your way. I'm not going to let you get away with it. Why don't you get this border secure? And until you do that, I don't want to hear a blip about COVID from you. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure glad he used the word blip, because I think he was this close to going somewhere else. But he's exactly right. If you aren't going to control the border and people coming across untested, unmasked, and unvaccinated, then please don't tell the rest of us how we're supposed to react to COVID. That's the hypocrisy of the Biden administration, and it is just disgusting. And by the way, Joe Biden answers to all of this by acting like he doesn't know who Ron DeSantis even is. Watch.
Using your words about don't be in the way and saying I am in the way to block too much interference with the federal government.
Governor who?
Yeah, Governor who? The funny thing is, I'm not sure Joe Biden does know who he is. He seems to forget his own script. So maybe he doesn't know who the governor of Florida is. He attacks him because it's in the prompter before him, but when asked who it is, he may not actually know, which is scary in itself. Okay, what else we got?
All right, another question for you. Do you feel like the Democrats are wanting all of this illegal immigration so that they can grant amnesty, which guarantees millions of extra votes from people who are living off of government assistance?
Oh, absolutely. I think that has a lot to do with it. And there's an assumption that all the people who come here illegally, if they are granted citizenship, will end up voting Democrat, and they might. But I think a lot of them are going to become entrepreneurs. They're going to work. Not all of them are in the drug market. Some of them really are coming for opportunity, and they're coming to escape the horrors of where they are. And some of them will find that America is a wonderful place. And if people are willing to come and work hard, learn the language, and be honest and help people, they can live pretty well here, way better than they can in some of the places from which they have come. And that will make them Republican.
We love it that so many folks are participating with us this afternoon, and still plenty of time to be part of the chat today. And of course, Super Chat, that's when you donate just a little bit of money, and it takes your chat comment up to the top, and make sure that you share it with friends, because we want you to be part and participate with us. This is your opportunity to chat with the governor one-on-one. It's right here. So a question for you from Just Mel was curious. They have all the numbers on hospitalizations and death for the latest virus. How does it compare to cold and flu and previous to this virus?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of stats that'll show that more people will die in a car wreck, more people will have a heart attack, and so on and so on. I don't want to give people the impression that somehow the numbers are inflated. I know in my own state of Arkansas right now, this past week, we were down to only 25 hospital beds statewide available. And I've talked to doctors and nurses. They are overwhelmed. Arkansas is one of the most maybe overrun states with cases. Personally, I've had 4 really close friends who've been in ICU over the past 3 weeks. 3 of them are finally out of ICU and they're home. One of them's still there and may not make it. So look, I'm very careful, and I try to always say this: don't blow this thing off. One of the reasons I took the vaccination, and I'm glad I did, if I should get COVID, I know there's a 90% chance I won't, but in the 10% chance that I do, it's probably going to be a mild case or maybe even asymptomatic, and I won't even know that I've had it. So that's important to me. The friends of mine who ended up in ICU wish that they had taken the vaccine to a person, every one of them. They weren't rebellious. They just didn't feel like they probably needed it. One of whom probably has some serious permanent lung damage from what the COVID will do. So take it seriously. Don't be foolish about it. But I also have said, if you are just not feeling good about taking the vaccine, then don't do it. Talk to your doctor. Not to me. I'm not your doctor. I can't give you medical advice and don't want to. But your doctor may say, look, you've had an issue with autoimmune diseases. You shouldn't take the vaccine. Then don't do it, for heaven's sakes. Just be careful. I think what we're really asking for is people to make thoughtful, informed decisions and make it outside of a political battle. This is not a political thing. It's really a public health thing, and people have different views on what's going to be best for them. And I just don't want either people who have had the vaccine or those who haven't to somehow think the other is doing something ridiculous, wrong, or immoral.
Right. Thank you, Governor. Railroad Journeys has asked, do you think the nation will end up dividing itself into upper North America and lower North America?
I think it may be more like coastal versus middle America. That's probably where the divide is. If you look at even the voting patterns, you'll see bright blue on the left coast, bright blue on the east coast, and particularly in the Northeast. The rest of the country is pretty doggone red. So it has more to do with coastal elitism versus middle America, I think, than anything else.
All right, we've got room for another question here. When are you going to bring the crew, according to T. Schaefer Mike, to do a show in Alaska? We love you.
Good to know. I'm actually going to be in Alaska, not this coming week, but the following week for Samaritan's Purse, Franklin Graham's wonderful organization. I'm going up there to do a week with their military families. They bring military couples up, and it's a time of spiritual retreat. My wife and I will both be up there ministering and just being there to provide some encouragement to these military families. And I've been to Alaska many times. I love Alaska, love to fish there. I want to go hunting there. I have not done that. It's a beautiful state, beautiful people. And this time of year, it's so much cooler than where I live in the South. So that's good too. Hey, we want to say thanks to all of you for joining us. Pam Case and I will be with you again next week. Remember to leave questions in the comments section, or you can also email a question to us. We will have it for next week at my2cents@tbn.tv. Be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and watch the show tomorrow night on TBN. Thanks. Have a great weekend. God bless, and goodbye.